Sir, Mr. Fee had asked you about behaviors that you had observed in or around the stadium, is that right?
Yes.
And you don't know what behaviors he was engaged in outside of that area?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
Nothing further, Mr. Kraft. Thank you.
You may step down.
I mean, what?
You may step down.
Thank you.
I'd call Mark Briggs, please.
Counsel, the name again?
Sorry, Mark Briggs. Briggs.
Raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated.
You may proceed.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
State your full name, please.
Mark Leslie Briggs.
And how do you spell your last name, please?
Briggs.
Sir, where are you from?
Originally?
Yes, sir.
From England.
Okay. And did you go to school there?
I did.
And after school, did you, what type of work did you engage in?
I joined the military.
How long were you in the military?
16 years.
And how were you assigned during the course of your military service?
Please explain what you...
Sure. Well, were you assigned to a particular unit?
I was infantry.
Okay. And as a result of being assigned to the infantry, were you assigned to different parts of the world?
I was.
At the end of 16 years, did you change professions?
I did.
And what did you do after your military service was completed?
I joined private security.
Okay. And when you first joined private security, where were you working?
Wembley Stadium in London.
Okay. And just tell us, what is Wembley Stadium in London?
Wembley Stadium is the national stadium, national soccer stadium in London. Back then he had the stadium, the arena, conference centre, exhibition halls. So we ran multiple events throughout the year.
Okay. And just in terms of your duties running those events, just describe those.
I ran a security company. I owned a security company. So I provided employees for the events, and I managed the events from a direct position for Wembley Stadium.
How long did you do that for, sir?
Probably 12 years, 14 years.
And at the, excuse me, at the end of the 12 or 14 years, did you take a new position?
I did, yes.
And what year was that, sir?
1998.
Okay. And what position did you take after Wembley Stadium?
I ran security for the Olympic Games in Sydney.
Okay. And how long did you do that?
2 years.
And was that similar to the work that you were doing in terms of the security work that you were doing at Wembley Stadium?
Similar, yes.
Okay. After you finished your time there, the 2 years in Sydney, did you take on a different job?
Yes.
And what year was that, sir?
That was the year 2000, the end of 2000.
Okay. And where did you go to work at that time?
In Foxborough.
Okay, and what type of work or what position did you take?
The Director of Security for the New England Patriots and Gillette Stadium.
Okay, and how long did you work in that position?
I still work in that position now.
Okay, so approximately 15 years?
Yes.
And just describe your duties as Director of Security at Gillette Stadium and for the New England Patriots.
I'm responsible for the physical security of Gillette Stadium, Patriot Place, the New England Patriots, New England Revolution. We have a security company that I am the Chief Operating Officer for, and we do security operations or event operations at Boston College and Harvard University.
And as part of your duties, do you have contact with players of the organization?
Yes.
And taking you back approximately 2 years ago, did you know an individual by the name of Aaron Hernandez?
Yes.
Had you met him on prior occasions?
Yes.
And do you see Aaron Hernandez in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point him out and just describe what he's wearing?
Aaron's sort of the light grayish type shirt, black jacket, dark gray tie.
Your Honor, if the record can reflect the witness identifying the defendant. Now, during were there certain procedures that you had in place at that time as Director of Security that related to the players?
Objection to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Oral.
Your Honor, would you see if I
Sir, were there certain trainings with regard to policies that required players to do certain things in certain circumstances?
Yes.
And would you be involved in those trainings?
Yes.
And did those trainings have...
to the form of the question, Your Honor, it's hypothetical.
It's a question of whether something happened or didn't happen.
That objection to that question is overruled.
With regard to the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, did he participate in those trainings?
Yes.
And did those trainings require certain reporting of incidents that happened off the field, outside, away from the facility?
Objection.
Sustained in the form of the question.
Okay, well, tell us about what, if any, reporting requirements there were required of players.
Well, it's that was communicated to the defendant.
Okay. Your Honor, if I could just first establish the requirement.
You may not. You may
Okay.
first establish whether or not what was communicated to this defendant.
Okay. With regard to the requirements that were communicated to the defendant, are you aware of what policies or requirements were communicated to him?
There was a lot of policies communicated to
Go ahead
players.
and describe them if you would.
There are the player conduct policies.
Tell us about those.
How a player is expected to conduct themselves within the community during games, etc. There's gambling policies. There's ticket scalping policies. There are media policies. There's a whole host of policies that are covered by the NFL.
Was there a policy as it related to any incident that the police were involved?
Objection.
Sustained in the form of the question.
Okay. What other policies did you have, sir?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
As part of the code of conduct policies, there's a reporting policy.
Okay. Tell us about that.
If an individual who's part of the NFL, player, coach, staff member, is involved in a potential criminal situation, then they are to report that incident to the club and to the league at the earliest opportunity.
Okay. And was that policy known to the defendant?
Yes.
And just taking you now, sir, to, at some point, approximately June 19th of 2013, do you recall that being a Wednesday?
I don't recall it being a Wednesday, but okay.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just ask you this. Do you recall an occasion being at the Gillette Stadium in June 2013 where you met with the defendant in the training room?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at that time, prior to meeting him, had you at least learned certain information about a homicide that was being investigated in North Attleboro?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. What, if any, well, let me ask you this. When you met with him, did you ask him certain questions about something?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you ask him about?
I asked him about an incident that had been reported a day before.
Okay, and what was that information? Did you tell him about the nature of the information you'd heard about?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what did you say to him?
Objection, the question calls for hearsay.
The objections overruled. Let me tell you, as with many other times where there have been evidence as to statements allegedly made by the defendant, sometimes what was said to the defendant prior to a statement being made comes into evidence. That's not coming into evidence for the truth of anything that was said, simply to put in context any response.
Sir, what did you say to him at that time?
Could you repeat the question for me,
Sure.
please?
At some point, did you ask him about a certain matter that you had heard about?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what was the matter that you asked him about?
It was an incident with the death of Odin Lloyd.
Okay. And just tell us, what did you say to the defendant about the death of Odin Lloyd?
I asked him if he was involved in the incident.
And what did he say when you asked him that question?
No.
Okay. And did you then ask him something else?
I asked him why he'd lawyered up.
Okay. And let me just ask you this.
Objection is sustained. It's ordered stricken. You should disregard it. There should be absolutely no, as with any evidence the court has ordered stricken and disregarded. It's not anything you can consider in any way, shape, or form in your deliberations or even discuss. Could I see counsel? In addition to the instructions I gave you striking that witness's last testimony, let me just remind you, as I'm sure you all understand, that the right to counsel, the right to consult with an attorney is secured under our Constitution, our federal Constitution, our state Constitution. It's a sacred right. It's there is absolutely no obligation on the part of anyone, any citizen in this country, to ever speak with the police or to in any way be part of or assist in any investigation that is being taken, and anyone has the right to consult and to speak with an attorney at any time. You may proceed.
Sir, just backing up a second. When you went to the the training room, when you had this conversation with the defendant, was anybody else there?
And not when I was having the conversation with Mr. Hernandez. There were people in the room, but not where we were.
Okay. And sir, at that time, did you have a conversation with him when where you had asked him whether he had been with Odin?
Yes.
Okay, and what did he say?
He told me he had. He'd been at a nightclub with Mr. Lloyd.
Okay. And then when he had indicated he'd been with, at a nightclub with Mr. Lloyd, did he indicate, in just the context of what you were speaking to him about Mr. Lloyd, did he indicate how long he had been at the club with Gordon Lloyd?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And do you recall, did he indicate whether they had remained together or done something else after being at the club with Mr. Lloyd?
They went separate ways at the end of the
Did he
evening
say where he went?
with friends.
Okay. And where did he say Mr. Lloyd went?
I don't believe he said that Mr. Lloyd went anywhere.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe he said that he went anywhere.
Okay. And did he say he had given something to Mr. Lloyd when they parted, when the defendant parted with Mr. Lloyd?
The keys to a vehicle.
And did he indicate where then he went did the defendant indicate where he went, meaning the defendant, with a friend or friends?
I don't believe so.
And did you have a further conversation with him about why he thought, or why his name was even brought up?
Objection.
Did he say something about that?
He said that the keys were found with Mr. Lloyd to the vehicle.
Now, at that time, did you ask him whether he was telling you the truth?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. What else did you ask him?
I asked him if he was telling me the truth.
Okay, and what did he say?
Objection. Move to strike.
Sir, when you asked him if he was telling the truth, what did he say?
He said he was telling the truth, yes.
Okay, and did he say something else? Did he swear on something?
Yes, he did.
I object to the leading here, Your Honor.
Overall.
What did he say, sir?
He swore on his baby's life that he was telling the truth.
And how long did you speak with him?
5 minutes.
And after that 5 minutes, what happened?
Mr. Hernandez left the building.
Okay. Now, at that time, did you have a conversation, or let me ask you this, prior to you meeting with him, had he contacted you in any way about this situation?
No.
Had you attempted to contact him?
Yes.
Approximately how many times?
3 or 4 times.
Okay. And at some point, as a result of not being able to contact him, when you saw him in the training room, did you have a conversation about that?
Yes.
And just tell us about that conversation.
I told Mr. Hernandez I'd tried to call him on his cell phone, and the message that I got back was that the voice box was full. Mr. Hernandez told me that his phone had been taken off him by law enforcement.
Okay. And at that time, did he indicate something else about a new phone?
He said he was going to purchase a new phone.
Okay. And with regard to contacting you, did you have any conversation about whether he would or wouldn't contact you after he got his new phone?
I asked Mr. Hernandez to call me and let me have the number from his new cell phone.
Okay. And at some time after that, did he contact you with the new number?
No.
Did you have any further conversation with him after this occasion in the training room at that time?
On that particular day?
Yes, sir.
We had a brief conversation.
Okay. And was that the following day?
Well, we hadn't finished the conversation on that particular day on the Wednesday.
I see. What other conversation did you have?
Mr. Hernandez was waiting for a lift, a ride home. He told me his mother was driving up from Connecticut to pick him up, to take him home, and then he left the building.
Okay. And did you see him after that?
I saw him the next day.
Okay. And was that, how long did you see him the next day? Just in terms of time?
5 minutes.
Okay. And during that time, was there any more conversation about the matter, the investigation, or the death of Odin Lloyd?
Objection, leading.
Okay, well, tell us about that conversation.
The conversation wasn't necessarily involving the incident, the death of Mr. Lloyd.
Okay.
I actually asked Aaron to leave the building.
Okay. And so is it, outside of that conversation, was there any other discussion?
I don't recollect any other discussion at that time.
Okay. Did you see him after that occasion?
No.
Okay. If I could have a moment, Your Honor, please.
Morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Briggs, you work for the Kraft organization, don't you, in your security capacity?
Yes.
And as part of those responsibilities, you take care of the premises at Foxborough Stadium area, is that right?
Yes.
That includes the shopping mall
Yes.
and the parking lots
Yes.
and the stadium itself.
Yes.
Sir, regarding your conversation with Aaron, that took place at the stadium, correct?
Correct.
And when you saw Aaron, he appeared to you as he had always appeared to you, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And when you spoke to him, he told you that Odin Lloyd was the boyfriend of his fiancée, Cheyenne's sister, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And he told you that Odin was like family, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And he told you that Odin had been to his home on many occasions, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And this conversation that you had, Aaron also told you that he had been to a club with Odin Lloyd, didn't he?
Yes.
And he told you that he had loaned a vehicle to Odin Lloyd, is that right?
Give him the keys to a vehicle, yes.
He'd given him the keys to the vehicle, yes. But you're not sure of when Aaron last saw Odin Lloyd, are you?
No.
And Aaron didn't give you a date or a time when he had last seen Odin Lloyd, did he?
No, he did not.
And this conversation, Mr. Briggs, you say occurred on June 19th?
Yes.
Do you remember testifying in the grand jury that this conversation occurred on June 18th, sir?
No.
You remember being asked by the Assistant District Attorney, now this would be on the 18th of June, correct? You answered correct. Next question, Tuesday, answer yes. Page 277, Mr. McCauley. You remember testifying to that, sir?
No.
Let me read the question. Question, line 5, Mr. McCauley. Now, this would be on the 18th of June, correct? Answer, correct. 7, line 7, Mr. McCauley. Question, on Tuesday? Answer, yes. You recognize that as your testimony, sir, in the grand jury?
Yes.
Now, you say this conversation with Aaron was brief, is that right?
Very brief, yes.
And At some point, you asked him to leave the stadium, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And do you remember what date that was on, sir?
It was the second day that Aaron came into the building.
And you asked him to leave the stadium because his presence there was bad for business. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
And there are a lot of businesses that the organization has at the stadium. We talked about some a little earlier, didn't we?
Yes,
And those are separate and apart from football, correct?
correct.
And it was really the business element that prompted you to ask him to leave, wasn't it?
Yes,
And Aaron cooperated fully when you asked him to leave, didn't he?
yes, he did.
He complied with your request,
He cooperated fully with me, yes.
and he promptly left the building?
Not promptly, he was finishing a phone call.
He shook your hand,
Yes, he did.
and he didn't protest or attempt to stay or linger in any way, did he, sir?
No, he did not.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Sure, just for the context, your question to him that led him to describe, you had asked him, why did the police think he was involved? Is that right?
Objection to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I was subject to...
It's beyond the scope of cross-reference.
Call that coming up during cross.
Your Honor, with regard to the statements that he just asked him about the conversation, and I'll be glad to come to sidebar if you wish. And sir, what did the defendant say about the keys?
Objection, beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Did Mr. Fee ask you about your conversation with him about the keys? The keys were given to Odin?
Can you explain a little bit more?
Yes. A few minutes ago, when Mr. Fee was asking you questions, he had asked you about that he told you about the keys being given to Odin Lloyd. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay. When, just in the context of your conversation with Aaron Lloyd, with Aaron Hernandez, what did he say about the context of the keys being given to Odin?
Objection to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Aaron told me that he'd given the keys to Odin because Aaron was leaving with friends.
Okay, and leaving where?
The club.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Nothing.
You may sit down.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I apologize to come back to the sidebar, but there is a matter that I think we need to just chat about.
Went to California. The defendant was with Mr. Wallace. The defendant borrowed his telephone and his telephone number.
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Yes, the dates of the time they were there,
Right.
from April 26th, he then left a day early, flying back on the 30th, and you'll recall relating to...
Right, so the dates that they were both there, the dates that Mr. Hernandez was there in California.
Correct. And then while there, he made a statement, the defendant made a statement to Mr. Paradise that he didn't trust anybody. That during that time, Mr. Hernandez was paying for everything for both him and for Wallace. And during that time, they were using marijuana, smoking marijuana approximately I think he said every hour or two. Wallace and the defendant were smoking marijuana. I think that would, those would be the subject areas, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we found out that...
So in a minute, just the B and C, on the defense motion, there's no objection on B and C. You don't intend to inquire into B and C.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Well, Your Honor, I would say that the statement that the Commonwealth is going to attempt to elicit from this witness would fall into B. It is completely out of context. It is thrown out there in order to accomplish the same purpose as these other types of characterizations, which the court has dealt with in the past, even if it was deemed relevant. Because of the remoteness from the acts that are under consideration here, clearly on a balancing, we believe that that would be more prejudicial than probative as to any issue in dispute here in the court, would introduce the very subject which we have set out in B, and which we have discussed with the court to the extent that the Commonwealth is seeking to try and elicit anything beyond marijuana.
That's all I had intended, Your Honor.
So, with respect to the sort of 9 topics the Commonwealth listed, the only topic today you're objecting to is the statement, not trust anybody.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. The objection to that is sustained. I assume that Mr. Paradis, you talk to him, someone will talk to him, he will be warned that he is to listen carefully and he is not to blurt out anything with respect to the matters that this court has indicated he cannot testify to, and that
I would do that, Your Honor, but I'd just ask, Your Honor, just because you had asked me the topics and I really haven't been able to articulate to the court our reason for wanting to offer that statement. The defendant, that is a statement of the defendant, that
Right.
he didn't trust anyone. The context, the full context would be in. There's nothing nefarious about that. He made the statement he didn't trust anyone. The defense, as the court knows in this case, has continued to suggest that there was a relationship between Ode and Lloyd and the defendant, that there would be no reason for him to have a motivation to kill him. The statement, I don't trust anybody, would clearly incorporate Ode and Lloyd. Ode and Lloyd obviously is somebody. So where there was other evidence where Ode and Lloyd knew certain things, and even further corroborated by the text message itself that morning about somehow I screwed up and told Odin about the spot, that there would be reason for him to distrust Odin Lloyd, particularly where he's made the statement he doesn't trust anybody. So that would be relevant with other evidence to that.
in the context of Paradis, we have the struck testimony with respect to the defendant's statements as to guns, as to a gun, Mr. Paradis feeling an object that has a gun, the context of what was going on in California, quite different from any of the evidence in this case, and therefore the court has sustained the objection.
And Judge, I would just say it had nothing to do with the gun. His statement about that was at another location where he made that statement. So again, correlating that back to the guns, I don't think is fair. It's not in that context. And if we have to then bring him in and ask him about it, we could do that.
Okay.
But just to say that respectfully, it's relevant when somebody's saying, I don't trust anybody, and then at the same time, the defense is trying to suggest they're buddies, where in fact he's saying, I don't trust anybody. And then there's evidence less than 36 hours before his death where he's sending a text message to his fiancée saying somehow he screwed up by telling him information, indicating there's more reason to be to have concerns about trust with Mr. Lloyd. So it's essentially striking out any reason for him to have a motivation, which clearly would be relevant with all the other evidence in the case, and particularly because it has nothing to do with the guns in California. He's already been instructed on that.
Your Honor, the court's analysis in the first instance was the correct one. And I think the argument of a 403 type balancing has been made by the Commonwealth. The prejudice associated with this statement. If Mr. Hernandez had said, "I hate everyone out in California," would they be allowed to elicit that in order to say that he hated Mr. Lloyd 2 months or 3 months later back in Massachusetts? This is classic balancing material, Your Honor, and we would ask that the court adhere to its first ruling.
The objection is sustained. Resume 15 minutes.
But all rise.
We call Robert Paradise, please.
If you could please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
State your full name, please.
Robert Paradise.
And spell your last name for us.
Paradis.
How old are you, sir?
28.
And where did you grow up?
Bristol, Connecticut.
And did you go to school there?
Yes.
Is that elementary and high school?
Middle school and high school.
Middle, okay. And while you were growing up, did you play sports in Bristol?
Yes.
And did you play on any high school teams?
Yes.
What teams did you play on?
Football, basketball, and track.
Okay. And at that time, when you were there, did you know an individual by the name of Aaron Hernandez?
Yes.
Okay. And just for the record, do you see him in the courtroom?
Yes.
Could you just point him out and describe what he's wearing?
A suit.
Okay, I'm sorry, just if you describe his suit.
A suit, blue shirt, dark tie.
Okay, Your Honor, threat can reflect witness identifying the defendant.
It's me.
Now, during your high school years, did you become friendly?
Yes.
And after high school, did you go off to college?
Yes.
And during those years, did you remain in touch with the defendant?
Sporadically, yeah.
Okay. Now, directing your attention back to April of 2013, do you recall receiving or having contact with the defendant at that time?
Yes.
And just tell us about that. How did he contact you?
We planned a trip out to Los Angeles.
Okay. And do you recall when that trip was planned for?
April 26th through the 1st.
And how did you travel to Los Angeles?
Airplane first class.
Okay. And when you say airplane first class, where did you fly out of?
Bradley, Hartford.
And who paid for that?
Aaron did.
Okay. And when you flew out to L.A., did anyone meet you at the airport?
Yeah. Aaron did in Bo.
Okay. When you say Bo, who is that?
Fish and his friend.
Okay. When you say Bo Fish, is that one or two people?
It's one person.
So I'm just going to show you what's been marked. Exhibit 20, you recognize this individual?
Yes.
Who do you recognize him to be?
That's Bo or Fish.
And when they met you at the airport, where did you go from there?
We went back to his condo.
And where was the condo?
I can't really recall. It was on the beach.
Was the town called Hermosa Beach?
Yes.
Okay. And just over the next, how many days did you remain in that, in the LA area?
From the 26th through the 1st.
Okay. Just tell us what types of things were you doing during that time?
Just hanging out, going out to eat, a couple bars, typical stuff.
Excuse me, and during that time, was there any marijuana being consumed?
Yes.
Okay, and who was consuming marijuana?
Aaron and Bo.
And how often were they consuming marijuana?
It's pretty frequent. I can't really tell you how often exactly, but
Okay, well, approximately, when you say it's pretty frequent, how frequent?
every couple hours.
Every couple of hours?
Sure.
And how were they ingesting the marijuana?
Smoking.
Okay, was that, you know, whether they were joints or blunts or,
I can't recall exactly what they were, but
okay. And during that time, when you say every couple of hours, did that continue over the course of those number of days you were there?
yes.
Now, when you indicated some of the things that you were doing, who was paying for either going out or bars or any of that?
Aaron.
And did you ever see Bo or Fish paying for anything?
No.
Now, at some point in time while you were out there, did anybody borrow your phone?
Yes.
And who was that?
Aaron.
And do you know why he was borrowing your phone?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you know whether he made calls on your phone?
Yeah.
And do you know where the calls were to?
At that time, no.
Okay. Did you later find out?
Yes.
And where were they to?
Florida.
And did you recognize any of the numbers that were being called in Florida?
No, I didn't.
Now, at some point while you were, did you have a planned return?
Yeah, I was going to fly out the first back east.
Okay, and when you first arrived out there, do you know what date the defendant was to return?
It was a day earlier than I.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. At some point, did his date change?
He told me he was flying out a day early, later in the mini vacation.
Okay, and so your date was what?
The first, May.
Was that May 1st?
Yes.
And so what date did he fly out?
April 30th.
Okay, and on that date, did he, what about Bo?
Bo did as well.
So did the two of them leave together
Yes.
on April 30th?
Yes.
And did you remain till the following day
Yes.
and then travel home separate or by yourself?
Correct.
Now, at that time, what was your phone number?
Do you want me to?
Yes, if you would.
Okay, 860-517-9872.
Okay. And if I could have a moment, Your Honor. And sir, do you recall what date your phone was used by the defendant to call Florida?
I can't recall exactly.
Okay. May I approach your own? So I'm just going to have you take a look at, right there, if you just look at this information along that line, see if that refreshes your memory about the date.
That seems about right, yeah.
Okay, what date was that, sir?
April 27th.
And did the defendant indicate to you who he was calling in Florida?
No.
Now, sometime after your return, Were you contacted by somebody?
Yes,
Who were you contacted by?
3 men. Agent Grasso was one of them.
Okay. When you say Agent Grasso, do you know what agency he was from?
I can't recall.
Okay. And what about, you said 3 men?
Yeah,
Do you know the other 2?
I can't recall their names, but
Okay, do you know what agencies they were from?
one was State Trooper, FBI agent, if I'm not mistaken, and ATF.
And as a result of them contacting you, did you have a conversation with them?
Yes,
And were there certain, did you then subsequently review your phone records?
yes,
And was there a number there that, was there a number that was called on the 27th of April that you did not call?
yes.
And do you recall what that number was?
I don't know the number exactly.
I wonder if I could approach you again. Sir, I'm just going to show you again this same line. Do you recognize your number here?
Correct.
Okay. And that would be the originating number?
Yes.
And the number called on that date of April 27?
Yep.
Okay. What is that number?
I don't know that number.
Okay, but that was the number that was reflected on your records?
Right.
Is that true?
Yes.
What is that number, sir?
That's someone else's, I don't know.
I understand that, but can you just read that number?
Oh, I'm sorry. 15617550678.
Okay. So 156175513, I beg your pardon. 15617550678.
Correct.
And I don't know if I could use the overhead, please. Sir, I'm just going to place what's been marked Exhibit 307 on the overhead. So I'm directing your attention to a name contained in this record, Gladwin Ski. Do you know anybody by that name?
I do not.
And does that reflect that number that had appeared on your phone record?
Yes.
I got a moment, Your Honor, please. That's all the person that I heard.
Good morning, Mr. Paradise.
Good morning.
Mr. Paradise, you've known Aaron since high school, is that right?
Yes.
And you guys played sports together?
Correct.
And you played sports with his older brother DJ too, didn't you?
Yes.
And I think you testified on direct examination that after high school, you kept in sporadic touch with Aaron, is that right?
Correct.
As he went to college in Florida, right?
Yes.
And you went to college up in New Hampshire?
Correct.
And then at some point, Aaron came back to the New England area, didn't he?
Yes.
And had you ever gone down to Florida and visited him there?
No.
But when he came back to New England area, you guys kept in sporadic touch with texts, is that right?
Yes.
And at some point, in I think the 2011 or 12 season, Aaron got you tickets to a Patriots game, is that right?
Correct.
And he gave you 4 tickets, you and your twin brother, correct?
Yes.
And his wife, and you brought a friend?
Mm-hmm.
And that was at Gillette Stadium, is that right?
Correct.
And then you mentioned that in the spring of 2013, Aaron invited you to join him in California, correct?
Correct.
Had you ever been out to California with Aaron before?
Never.
Had you met with Aaron in person before that trip?
Nope.
But Aaron invited you out, and you went. I think you said April 26th, sir?
Yes.
And you flew out there first class, and Aaron paid for your tickets, correct?
Yes.
And Aaron gave you lodging, put you up in the condo that he had in, I think Mr. McCauley said Hermosa Beach, is that right?
Correct.
And while he was out there, when you arrived, he was with another gentleman, correct?
Correct.
And that's the gentleman you identified as Bo, and you also mentioned Fish, is that right?
Correct.
And is that because you heard Aaron refer to him by both names?
Yes.
Was Bo also staying in the Hermosa Beach condo?
Yes.
Was there a gentleman with them by the name of Carlos Ortiz at any time out there?
No.
Now, when you were in California, you were there for a vacation, isn't that right?
Correct.
And that's kind of what the trip turned out to be, isn't it?
Right.
It was a little too cold to go to the beach, right?
Correct.
So you guys, like you said, went out and to restaurants, correct?
Correct.
And bars
Yes.
and some nightclubs.
Yes.
And you didn't spend much time in the condo, correct?
If we weren't out, we were there.
Well, would you say most of your time was out, or most of your time was in the condo?
I'd say 50-50.
Now, Mr. McCauley asked you about some phone calls, and wanted to ask you about that, sir. So, you testified that at some point Aaron asked to borrow your cell phone. Is that right?
Correct.
And he asked to borrow your cell phone because his cell phone had died. Is that
Correct.
right? I'm sorry, sir.
Correct.
And did you actually see Aaron using your cell phone?
Briefly, yes.
And when you testified about calls to Florida, you didn't know anything about any calls to Florida when you were out in California, correct?
When I was out there, no, I didn't know who he was calling.
It was when you looked at your phone bill later on at the request of law enforcement. Isn't that right, sir?
Correct.
That you saw that there were some Florida area codes that you didn't recognize.
Yes.
Do you know whether or not Bo ever used your phone when Aaron had it borrowed from you?
I don't recall him ever taking my phone.
Do you know if Bo ever used the phone after Aaron borrowed it from you?
I don't know that.
And you don't know who Aaron called, do you?
Nope.
And you didn't hear his conversation, did you?
No, I didn't.
Now, the trip lasted about, I think you said 4 or 5 days for you. Is that right, sir?
Correct.
And that was consistent with your plan to go out there for about 4 or 5 days. Is that right?
Correct.
And you returned and flew back to Bradley first class, correct?
Yes.
And after you arrived, you sent Aaron a thank you text, correct?
Yes.
And after that, which was after your return on May 1st, 2013, you didn't have any further contact with Aaron, did you?
Not much.
Okay. Not much?
No, it was just after the thank you text, and that was that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Paradise. Nothing further.
Nothing further. Thank you, sir.
You may step down.
You know, if I call, excuse me, Daryl Hodge, please.
This way, sir. If you could please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you state your full name?
Darrell David Hodge.
Okay, and I'm just going to ask you if you wouldn't mind pulling up just a little bit so we all can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. How do you spell your first name?
Darryl
And how about your last name?
Hodge.
How old are you, sir?
30.
And where did you grow up?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay. And did you go to school there?
John D. O'Brien.
And is that a, what type of school is that?
School of Mathematics and Science.
Okay, and for what grades?
Started in 7th. It goes all the way to your senior year.
Okay. And during the time that you were going to the John O'Brien School, did you meet an individual by the name of Odin Lloyd?
Correct.
And when did you meet him? How old were you?
I was in 8th. He was in 7th.
Okay. And as a result of meeting him at that time, did you become friends?
Yes, sir.
How long did you remain friends?
Till today.
Okay. And during that time, did you play sports together?
Correct.
And what kind of sports were you involved in?
Football mostly.
Okay. And where did you play?
John D. O'Brien, and also with the Boston Bandits, a little semi-pro.
Okay. So sometime after graduating high school, did you go on to college?
Yes, I did.
And what about Odin?
He did as well, too.
And do you know where he went?
Delaware State or something like that.
Okay. And at some point, did he return back to Boston?
Indeed.
Do you know what caused him to return?
Financial hardships.
Okay. And once he had returned, do you know what he was doing to support himself?
Just normal jobs.
Okay. And at some point, did you, after your college time, did you return to Boston?
Correct.
And did you, the two of you, still see each other?
Correct.
And during that time, did you continue to play football?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated a few moments ago about the Boston Bandits. What is that?
It's a semi-pro. It's like a grown man's Pop Warner League.
Okay. And where did you play?
In Boston.
And what was the season? When did you play?
Season usually starts from July, lasts until like October, late October.
And do you know whether there were, would you have practices or scrimmages in the spring?
In the spring, we'll have a couple of scrimmages if you get them scheduled, because it's a working man's league, as I said prior to. But other than that, we had just games on, well, we had practices on Tuesdays, sometimes twice a week, but the last couple of years, it's only been once a week, which is Tuesday nights.
Okay. And taking you back to the spring of 2013, were you playing in the league that year?
Correct.
And what about Odin Lloyd?
He was playing as well.
And how long had you and he played in that league together?
For a while, for years, probably a good amount of years, probably since like 2007, 8.
And what position did you play?
A little bit of everything, corner, receiver, kick return, all the specialty positions.
And what about Odin?
He's a tool as well, long snapper, tight end, wherever we could use him.
Okay. And at that time, would the two of you work out frequently?
Yes, sir.
And what kind of workouts were you doing?
Just a combine of all the workouts we've learned, different football programs and whatnot. We just picked a regiment and stuck to it.
Okay. How frequently were you seeing him in the spring of 2013?
Daily.
And would you also have phone contacts with him?
Correct.
How frequently would those be back in the spring of 2013?
Daily.
Okay. Now, at some point, do you know where he was working in the spring of 2013?
Landscaping, somewhere in like Norwood.
Okay. And do you know how he traveled to and from Norwood to get to his
Bicycle.
landscaping job?
On a bicycle.
Okay. And at that time, would you, during the week, how many days out of the week would you see him?
Give and take, 4 and 5, 4 to 5.
Okay. And where would you generally see him?
Ever and anywhere. His home, my home, the gym, practice.
Did you know his family?
Correct.
And you said you've been to his home?
Correct.
How many times?
A lot, frequently.
Okay. Now, at that time, did he have a vehicle?
No.
And you indicated he would travel on his bike?
Correct.
Now, at some point, do you recall directing your attention to Saturday, June 15th of 2013? Do you recall seeing him on that date?
Yeah, we had a scrimmage.
Okay. And on that date, when you said you had a scrimmage, where was the scrimmage played?
At our high school field, which is John D. O'Brien.
Okay. And did you see Odin play in the scrimmage that day?
Correct, yeah.
And at some point after the scrimmage, did you see how he was traveling?
Yeah, that day he had a black Suburban.
Okay. And had you ever seen that before?
No.
Okay. Now, with regard to an individual by the name of Aaron Hernandez, had you ever seen him with Odin before?
No.
Now, after the scrimmage, did you have further contact with Odin that day?
Not Saturday, no.
Okay. Now, prior to this, did you know whether Odin ever used marijuana?
Correct.
And just in terms of how long had you known him to use marijuana?
I don't know, a couple of years.
Okay. And how frequently would he use marijuana?
I don't know, daily.
Okay. And to the extent that, did you ever know him to deal in marijuana?
No, not really.
Okay. Now, at some point in June, well, let me just back up. So on that Saturday, at some point later in the evening, did you see him?
On Saturday?
Yes, sir.
No, not after the scrimmage, no.
Okay. On Sunday, did you see him?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I did, on Sunday.
And where did you see him next?
Outside of my house, actually. He picked me up after I got out of church. He picked me up. We just hung out on Sunday.
Okay. And when you say he picked you up, what did he pick you up in?
In the Suburban.
Okay. Now, after he picked you up and you hung out, did you hang out most of the day?
Correct.
Okay. And just tell us what you did that day.
He picked me up. I had on like a beach hat, some sunglasses, so he pretty much went home and got his matching apparel. My cousin was throwing some food on the grill, so we went over there, hung out for a little while, played some pool, and just hung out. Just a cool. We didn't have any children, so it was just a cool Father's Day. I guess we would just went around and hung out with all our father friends, our friends who had kids.
Okay. And what areas were you hanging out?
In and around the Boston area.
Okay. How many different places did you go to with Odin?
Including his house, my house, 4. His house, my house, my cousin's house, 3rd house, and then we went to just like a gathering later, like a band launching later.
Okay, when you say a band launching...
It's like a Caribbean event. People come by, have fun, just cool outside, listen to music.
Okay, was food being served?
More than likely, yes.
Yes. Now, at some point into the evening, were you still with Odin?
Correct.
And where were you, say now in the evening hours?
Probably up until like, I was with him till about like 9:15.
Okay. When you say you were with him until around 9, where were you with him last?
When he dropped me off,
Okay, and where did he drop you off?
home.
And prior to that, approximately 9 o'clock in the evening while you were with him, he was dropping you off. Do you recall him getting a text message?
Correct.
Okay, and just tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I got a text message before we had left the band launching place, just saying he had work, because that's what he's pretty much.
Objection sustained.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Around 8:30, thereabouts, were you with him?
Correct.
And at that time, did you see him get a text message?
Correct.
And after he had received a text message, did he state an intention to do something?
To leave the band launching,
Okay. And did he indicate an intention to do something the next day?
to go to work.
Okay. Now, after that, approximately a half hour later, around 9 o'clock, did he get that other text?
Yeah, he got a text around 9 o'clock while he was dropping me off.
Okay. And at this time, did you have an occasion to see his phone?
While we was driving, he passed me his phone.
Okay. And when he passed you the phone, were you able to look at it?
Correct.
And did you see a particular name on the phone?
No, there was not a particular, well, there was a distinct name, yes.
Okay. And what was that?
I'm going to object to hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Am I permitted?
There's no question in the moment.
Okay. And did you recognize the name? Just yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, just yes or no, did you have a conversation with him?
Yes.
And did he indicate an intention to do something at that time?
Either go home or go out.
Okay. Now, how long after receiving that text were you with him?
Give and take 7 to 8 minutes.
Okay. And at that time, what happened?
I got out the car, said my farewells, and went inside.
Okay. Now, and so that would be at approximately what time on Sunday?
9:15.
Okay. When is the next time you had any contact with Odin Lloyd?
That was it.
The following day, did somebody call you?
Yeah.
And as a result of that call, did you go somewhere?
Correct.
And when you went, where did you go?
I went to his house.
And approximately what time was that?
After 8, around 9.
Okay. And when, was it light or dark out at that time?
It was nighttime.
Okay. And when you got there, did you see anybody you recognized?
His family,
And how many?
his entire family,
Okay.
majority of them,
And did you see anybody else?
the police.
Okay. Now, did you see anything in or around his home in the yard?
Yeah, the black SUV, the black Suburban was still in the driveway.
Okay. And at that time, did you learn something had happened to Odin?
Correct.
And what was that?
Objection is sustained.
Did you learn he was no longer living?
Correct.
Sustained.
Okay. It's okay. When did you learn that something had happened to Odin Lloyd?
I had a call about after 8 from his sister asking me if I had spoken to him for that
Objection
day.
sustained.
Okay. So when did you learn?
Around 8:30.
Okay. And what did you learn about Odin Lloyd?
Objection is sustained.
Could we approach Your Honor, please? Sir, did you see was Odin Lloyd your friend?
Correct.
Okay. Did you see your friend on Monday?
No.
Okay. Tuesday?
No. Tuesday, what date? What's the date?
Okay. June 17th,
Objection.
2013?
Can you repeat your question, please?
Yes. Did you see Odin Lloyd on June 17th of 2013?
No.
Okay. Tuesday, the 18th?
No.
Objection.
Wednesday, the
Sustained.
19th?
Sustained.
Okay. Did you ever see him again?
No.
Okay. Have you ever been to a place, a cemetery in Boston?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Move on.
At some point, did you learn that something had happened to him, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. When did you learn that?
Monday, 17th, 2013.
Okay. And approximately what time?
Around between 8:30, 9.
And how long, you indicated you learned that where?
I got a call.
Okay, but where did you, where were you when you learned it?
Oh, I was at home.
Okay. And how, you indicated you went to Odin Lloyd's home?
Correct.
How long did you remain there?
A good while, probably 2 hours, 3 hours.
Okay. And did you ever see other friends coming or going?
Objection, the relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled to this question.
Correct.
Okay. You ever seen Aaron Hernandez at the home?
Overruled.
No.
Okay. Now, after that date, at some point, well, let me ask you this. Did you have an occasion to be with Odin approximately a week before when he showed you something?
Yeah, we hang out every day.
Okay. But at some point, did he show you something that you hadn't seen him with before?
Yes.
What was that?
2 bags full of what we call doobies.
Okay. And do you recall where you were, excuse me, when he showed you that?
Outside of his home.
Okay. And just describe those bags, please.
2 sandwich bags, and they have joints in them. A lot of them. 2 separate bags.
And had you seen Odin Lloyd with any joints in the past?
Yeah, he smokes.
Okay. And what quantity of joints had you seen him in the past?
Not as many as what the bag contained.
And the ones you'd seen him in the past, just describe them in terms of their size or shape.
Pencil size, small.
Okay. When you say pencil size, in terms of the thickness?
Yeah, dude, it went from pencil size to like the big pencil they give a kid to draw.
Okay. Now,
Me?
so I'm just going to show you this. Do you recognize what's depicted here?
Yes,
And what does this depict?
the 2 sandwich bags of doobies,
Okay, and who's in this picture?
myself.
Okay. And how long, in relation to when you had learned something about Odin Lloyd on the 17th, how long before was this photograph taken?
Objection, floor with a question, Your Honor.
A date is fine.
Sustained.
How long before June 17, 2013 is this photograph taken?
Couple of days.
I'm going to offer this as the next exhibit.
No objection, Your Honor.
May be marked as the next exhibit.
And use the overhead, Your Honor. So is that the photo I just showed you?
Correct.
Now marked 424. And you indicated that, well, let me ask you this. How many doobies, as you refer to them, were contained in each of those bags?
About like 12, 10 to 12.
Okay. And there's one that is showing that you have in your mouth. Is that right?
No, that's not that didn't belong to that bag, them bags.
Okay, so just where did that one come from?
That one came from myself.
Okay. And in terms of the doobies that you had seen Odin with in the past, were they similar or dissimilar to the one that you have in your mouth?
The one in the past, you said?
Yes, in the past.
Correct. His was similar.
Okay. And on this date, when he showed you these two bags, how were they different, if at all, than what you'd seen in the past?
I mean, completely bigger.
Okay, how much bigger?
Twice the size.
Okay.
About 3 times the size.
And what about those bags, just in terms of quantity?
Give and take, probably like $300 in each bag.
So a total of $600?
In both bags, correct.
Okay. And have you ever seen him with approximately $600 in marijuana?
No.
So I'm just going to show you this picture and ask you if you recognize it.
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
Doobies rolled by O. Ben Lloyd.
And at some point, have you seen this picture before?
Correct.
And when did you first see it?
Texted to me.
Okay, when you say he texted it to you, with regard again to June 17, 2013, how long before that date did he text it to you?
This is probably like give and take 2 weeks, a week or two before.
Okay.
No objection.
Did the Marcus next exhibit?
This on the overhead, John? I'm placing now 425 on the overhead. That's the photo I just showed you. Is that right?
Correct.
And you indicated he had texted this to you approximately 2 weeks prior to the 17th.
Correct.
And, sir, just before I leave the overhead, did you recognize the background of where this photo was taken?
No.
And so when you saw him on the date, you indicated some number of days before June 17th with the two bags, did Odin indicate an intention of what he was doing with those bags?
Objection.
Yes, sir.
No.
Okay. I could have one moment, Your Honor, please. And just with regard to the time that you and Odin spent together, did you know him to frequent clubs?
No.
What did he do in his spare time?
He's a homebody. He's usually at home, so can do a lot of going out.
Nothing further, thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hodge.
Good afternoon.
Mr. McCauley asked you some questions about marijuana blunts. If I may, Your Honor, just put that exhibit back on the presenter. Can you see that all right, sir?
Yeah.
Now, that's a picture of you, isn't it, Mr. Hodge?
Correct.
And that picture was taken by Mr. Lloyd?
No.
Who took that picture, sir?
A friend of ours.
Who's that?
A friend.
Who's the friend, sir?
Darryl Sweet.
Was Mr. Lloyd with you when
Correct.
you held those bags up?
Correct.
And is it your understanding, Mr. Hodge, that Odin Lloyd rolled those doobies that are in those bags?
Correct.
Now, Mr. Lloyd, he was very skilled at rolling marijuana blunts, wasn't he?
Correct.
And he had perfected a technique that he used, hadn't he?
Correct.
He used rolling papers called raw.
Correct.
Is that right? And he would roll those in a very precise way. Isn't that right?
Correct.
Now, to do that, Mr. Lloyd needed rolling papers and marijuana and scissors and other things, didn't he?
Correct.
I just want to show you an exhibit. Put on exhibit 26, Mr. Hodge. You see that all right, sir?
Correct.
Do you recognize the bag in exhibit 26?
Yeah.
What do you recognize that bag to be, sir?
Odin had one like it.
Now, you were with Mr. Lloyd on Sunday, June 16th, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And you and Darryl Sweet and Odin at sometimes were riding around in that black Suburban you testified about, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember seeing that bag in the black Suburban?
Should have been in there.
Now, you mentioned also, sir, that you didn't know Mr. Lloyd to go out to clubs. Is that right?
Correct.
Do you know an individual by the name of Akil? Akil Joseph?
Yeah, vaguely.
Were you aware, sir, that that Akil is a friend of Mr. Lloyd's?
Correct.
Did you ever hear of a club called Club Unity?
Objection, Your Honor.
Correct.
I'm sorry, sir, there was a cough and I couldn't hear your answer. Did you ever hear of a club called Club Unity?
Correct.
Where is that club located, sir?
In Boston.
Is that a nightclub, a night spot?
still, it's like a cultural spot, cultural place,
It's kind of a,
but not, I wouldn't say nightclub is not downtown Boston.
no, I'm not asking that, sir. It's just, is that a destination people go to at night
Yeah,
for drinks and to socialize?
yes,
Did you ever hear of a club called Rumor in downtown Boston?
correct,
And you were close friends with Mr. Lloyd, correct?
correct.
Are you aware of Mr. Lloyd's trips to Club Rumor?
No,
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. No further questions.
Just briefly, Unity just described that club.
it's like a tavern. It's like the police barracks, like police troopers go somewhere, hang out after work. That's what Unity is for West Indian people. They go hang out, you could play pools, play cards. I don't know, it's like a tavern.
Okay,
It's not a club.
Is it predominantly a West Indian?
Pretty much, yeah. You could throw
Patrons?
functions there, you could do like culture stuff, family stuff, like events, activities.
Thank you, nothing further.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Your Honor, can we come side, please?
Me.